Since starting the getting so involved in crypto, do you think there's any misconceptions that people have about crypto that you're like, you got to really understand it to realize that you're thinking about crypto incorrectly?
The biggest one I will say is that people think of crypto as some kind of investment vehicle, okay, where they think that Bitcoin, let's say, is like a stock. It's like a stock that you buy, then you wait for the value of the stock to go up, and then you sell it. And a lot of the criticisms of Bitcoin also come from this misunderstanding, right? Where they say it's not backed by anything, etc. So they think of Bitcoin as some type of investment stock. And that is the biggest misconception of crypto, in my opinion, as an industry. Bitcoin is not a stock, Bitcoin is a currency. It is not a company, it's a currency. And it is the best currency out there. And I'll tell you why, okay? If you take any other currency like the Indian rupee, the US dollar, everything which is centralized, and when I say centralized, I mean it's owned by a government. These governments keep printing more and more and more and more and more money. And what happens is that the value of these currencies keeps going down and down because the governments are inflating it. So the money supply goes from 1 trillion to 50 trillion, and the money that you have becomes 2% of what it used to be. That's why you have things like inflation, hyperinflation. The supply of money keeps increasing because it's controlled by this one central entity, and they don't really care about you. They just need the money and they print more. And this has been going on across history, okay? If you take the Roman Empire, for example, one of the reasons the Roman Empire fell is because they were just devaluing the currency so much that it basically became worth nothing. So I think we can both agree that fiat currencies, when they're centralized and the central entity is printing like infinite amounts of it, it doesn't work out in the long run. And we've had hundreds and thousands of examples in history. A lot of
Hmm.
Americans are not aware, but before the US dollar, they used to have like other currencies that didn't work. Like they used to have continental dollars, and that went to zero because they printed so much of it. Before the continental dollar, every single state in the US would have their own printed currency, and they all went to zero because they printed so much of it. If you've heard the phrase not worth a continental, that comes from this. Okay, so I've established so far that fiat currencies, when they are when they're centralized and owned by this one entity, it doesn't work out well. So, what is an alternative? One alternative is like a currency that is inherently scarce, like gold. So, if a country was using, say, gold as its currency, then the government can't inflate gold, they can't print more gold. So, gold is a good system of money, you could say. But there are issues with gold where you can't transport it quickly over long distances. Like to take a lot of gold from India to the US, you would have to take it by ship, which could take weeks or months. I don't know how long it takes, but it takes a fucking long time. So gold would not work in today's world because of these things. And fiat currencies don't work for the reason that the governments can't be trusted, and they've historically shown that. And even today, more than half the money in the US was printed in the last 2, 3 years. So, how about we have a currency that is not controlled by anyone, that has limited supply, and that can easily be transferred from one place to another? That currency is Bitcoin. There are only 21 million Bitcoin. There
Hmm.
is no central entity that controls Bitcoin. And you can transfer it easily from any place in the world to any other place in the world via the blockchain, you could say. Like, I'm oversimplifying a little bit here. But as long as you have internet and I have internet, I can transfer you crypto directly without using a bank. So that is what makes it the most valuable and the best currency in the world, because we have predictable supply. Everyone knows the rules of the network, and no single player can just mess up the network like how the US government is printing unlimited amounts of cash. So, as a currency and not as a stock, Bitcoin is really the best currency in the market. And to answer your question, a lot of people don't get this. They don't understand that Bitcoin is a currency, is not a stock. It is not a share, it is not a debenture, it's a currency. And it is limited in supply, and it can be transferred anywhere across the world. And of course, people trust this currency. People are using it more and more and more as time goes on. So that is where the value of Bitcoin comes in, where it's really just how many people are trusting this to be real currency.
So you're basically saying that, Bitcoin is predominantly meant to be used as a currency, but as of late, a lot of people are using it as some sort of investment vehicle, but that's not the correct way to mainly perceive it.
Exactly. So Bitcoin is supposed to be a peer to peer system of electronic cash, right? And not a stock where you invest your USD in and you wait for it to blow up and then you sell it. I mean, people do that nowadays, but it isn't the intended purpose of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is supposed to be currency, and that is its real purpose. It's supposed to be a store of value and a currency as a medium of exchange.
What about all these other coins that are coming out? Do you see them being used as stocks?
I think the average person sees them all as stocks and they just invest. Like people are buying Dogecoin, which is pretty much something only an idiot would do. But because people see them all as stocks, Dogecoin has some value. But there are other useful currencies as well. Like Ethereum is very, very useful for smart contracts. And Ethereum at some point in the future will essentially replace the banking system with DeFi. Like you can
and
think of
it,
DeFi as the entire banking system, lending money, borrowing money, everything, derivatives, but completely trustless and you don't need banks.
and
So
Ethereum, can it be used as a currency too, or is it mainly for smart contracts?
all blockchains have currencies. If a blockchain doesn't have a currency, then it's not, I would not call it like a real blockchain. Because what do you like how do what is a system then to incentivize people to do or not do certain things? So Ethereum can itself be used as a currency too. Like I can send you ETH, you can pay me in ETH, but it isn't intended as a currency in the sense that it doesn't have predictable supply in a way. And I'm trying to think of the right words for this. It's not the optimal choice for currency. Like Bitcoin as a currency is better. Like it's just currency, right? If I had to make a comparison, Ethereum is like a smartphone and Bitcoin is like a calculator. So Bitcoin is more convenient and a better thing to use for calculations than a smartphone is.
Hmm.
So
Now,
you
would you
can
recommend?
use Ethereum as currency, but Bitcoin is a better system of currency than Ethereum because Bitcoin was made keeping this thing in mind, right? Bitcoin rarely changes. It's very, very backward compatible and everything like that. It's a very stable system that doesn't change as much. Versus with Ethereum, it changes all the time. So in the future, there might be an update which changes the system a lot, and the value of Ethereum might fluctuate. So it's not like the value when I say the cap, how much Ethereum is in the market, those numbers might change. So ETH, I would not say is as great as a system of money than Bitcoin is.
So the average person, let's just say like a guy. Yeah, I mean, you're explaining everything simply, but let's say they're even more average, or they're like, I still don't get it. I have $1,000. What do I do now? So would this person be someone that, if they're thinking about getting into crypto, they put the money in and they're not just checking it all the time? They should adopt a long term thinking for this crypto.
But Arman, you don't get it right when you're asking that question. You're essentially asking from an investment perspective where you're asking, well, where should I invest my money? I have $1,000. I want to increase them to $20,000. Where do I put my money? That's
Hmm.
what you're asking.
Yeah, yeah. Like I get it. It's a predominant currency, But
What
let's
I'm
say,
telling you is that you will not have to sell the Bitcoin in the future. Let's say you spend your $1,000 to buy 1/30th of a Bitcoin. 20 years from now, you will not need to switch back to USD. That's what I'm telling you.
and do you see any other types of currency like with Bitcoin like features coming out, or do you think Bitcoin is going to be the king?
It's hard to say for sure. I like Monero quite a lot. It has better privacy features than Bitcoin, so it could be a real competitor. I don't know for sure. No one does.
Hmm.
But it's a good hedge because the only big, I would say, issue I see with Bitcoin is that the ledger is transparent. So you have issues like, let me give you a real example, okay? So in Canada, there were a few protests happening, and these protesters, they were doing this truck protest against COVID, and they were accepting donations in Bitcoin. And a lot of people donated Bitcoin to their UTXO, and the Canadian government is very tyrannical, so they brutally suppressed this protest, and the protesters were like walked over by the horses, etc. So they were very brutal. It was like China system in Canada, which is apparently the thing now. So the Canadian government said that this UTXO of these guys, these protesters, can't be on any exchange. So if you send Bitcoin from those UTXOs to the exchange, your account will get blocked. And yeah, so people have to use these mixing services like CoinJoin. And what happened, like what a CoinJoin does is that it takes these UTXOs and then combines them together. The issue is that because the ledger is completely public, you can tell who was using CoinJoin. And what a lot of exchanges do is that they bar everyone who used CoinJoin. So if your coin has a history of being used in a CoinJoin transaction, and then you deposit it in an exchange, the exchange might simply just take your Bitcoin and say that this is illegal coins. We can't like to give it back to you until you like give us proof of how you got it, etc. So that's the biggest issue I see with Bitcoin, that I think is quite, to a significant extent, solved by Monero. So I think, I don't know in 20 years if Bitcoin is the only one that will be around as a system of money. I do think that there are issues with privacy in Bitcoin today, which could be solved either by Monero or by the Lightning Network, or maybe an update to the Bitcoin network itself. I don't know. But yeah, I have all three of them
You got all three. Just be safe.
just to be safe. Yes.
Yeah, no, no. No. The reason I'm asking a lot of this stuff is because, I mean, you're right about that, where a lot of people are using it more so as an investment vehicle versus a currency. And, I don't really get involved too much in the conversations, but I hear, like, typically, like, if I'm in public, people talking about, like, oh, if you want to, you know, invest in something, invest in like this coin, that coin. But you're saying, like, just to view it more as a currency, and get rid of the thinking of investing for the time being.
Yes. So you can't really invest in Bitcoin because, I mean, you can, but in 20 years, this will be the normal currency that people use for everything, right? You will buy my ebooks in Bitcoin, you will buy your groceries in crypto, and you will get paid in crypto. Your employer will pay you in crypto. And the USD, the Indian rupee, all of these things will be relics. No one will care. No one will know what these things were, just like how we don't know what a continental dollar was. And we don't remember using gold coins to make things, right? These things will be history. People
Hmm.
in the past were doing it and they were savages. They were not as smart as us. We use Bitcoin type of stuff. Because for a kid who was born today, Bitcoin is as good as 1 million years old because it existed before he was born.